Hey, this is Will Downing, and you're listening to Your Morning Coffee, the podcast with your hosts Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchert. Weekly music news for the new music business.
From Kristen Robinson at Billboard, Suno launches Artist Incubator, offering grants and marketing to indie talents.
From Carlo Kixon via LinkedIn, why artists can't ignore vanity metrics.
And from Ariel King at Music Business Worldwide, the science behind ticketing, how artists and their teams price tours.
And by Rich Koajay for Hypebot, the label model is training artists not to need labels. Well, we've got a bunch of really interesting stories. We're glad you're here. Jay and I are going to start the show right about now.
Stand by for transmission.
This is London calling.
Wake up! The revolution is at hand! Your morning coffee is on the air. On the air, on the air, on the air, on the air, on the air.
Standing by.
Your morning coffee, the weekly music news for the new music business. It's the highly curated, agitated, advocated, moderated, and liberated digital music information that you need to know. We are your digital music authority. And now from our studios in Hollywood, California, here's your hosts, Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart.
Well, good day to see you, Jay. It is a good day to see you and hang out with you. And here we are.
Every day above ground is a good day, my friend.
That's exactly right. And even though we all have internet in our house, sometimes it goes a little haywire.
Yeah, we had a little bit of a ghost in the machine this morning, as we all do from time to time. But the show must go on. And
the show must go on.
Fixed for now.
Indeed. Hey, let's talk about Graham Davis. He is the president and CEO of DEMA. That is the Digital Media Association. And we did a special bonus episode with Graham, and it's dropping this Wednesday. DEMA is the trade association representing the world's leading music streaming services such as Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Music, YouTube, Pandora, SiriusXM, and now Tidal and Qobuz.
That's right. We sit down with Graham and discuss the music industry's 11 straight years of growth and how DEMA approaches AI, some of their legislative wins. We even talk about mental health, higher quality audio, and one metric from their annual report that he wishes every musician, songwriter, and even skeptic would actually stop and take a look at.
Yes, well, that's coming, and check it out. And we've got another special episode we are going to record this week. Dan Makta, he's the managing director over at Qobuz, and we're going to be recording that this Friday. Speaking of Qobuz, an article in Wired by Sophie Charara, Qobuz is the anti-Spotify music streamer you've been waiting for with its music-focused no AI content policy and larger artist royalties. The high-res streaming service is scooping up all sorts of switchers.
That's right, and we'll be talking about that and many other things with Dan this week. Really looking forward to that conversation. Before we move into our stories, I just started reading a really great book. It's called A Screaming Life Into the Super Unknown with Soundgarden and Beyond. And this is a memoir from guitarist Kim Thayil, who just happens to be a friend of our family. I'm just getting into the first few chapters. It's really good so far, and hopefully that'll be part of our Your Morning Coffee book club.
Yes, indeed. It is co-written with music journalist Adam Tepedelen. The book details his journey from the Chicago suburbs to the Seattle grunge scene and the historic rise of his band. Yeah, great stuff. Hey, before we get rolling, let's thank our sponsors. Support for the show comes from Cosign. Cosign is a reimagined publishing administration platform launched by independent music publisher Cobalt.
That's right. Cosign is designed for artists, producers, songwriters. It allows creators to collect global publishing royalties with simple, transparent terms and no long-term contracts.
Right, in its first year of operation, Cosign was named one of the 10 most innovative music companies by Fast Company. Find out why at cosignmusic.com. And every weekend, I get to hang out with my good friend Jay Gilbert, music business consultant, educator, curator of the weekly Your Morning Coffee newsletter, and a former executive with Universal Music, Sony Music, and Warner Music Groups.
That's right. And every week I get to do this podcast with my good friend Mike Etchart, longtime host of Sound and Vision Radio, formerly of SST Records, Warner Music, Capital EMI, and Universal Music Group. And, you know, if we could do this every day, we would.
Yes, we would. And as we mentioned many, many times, when we start actually doing this, it's well into an hour of just BSing and talking about stuff. So
that
is my favorite part of the day.
Oh, yeah. Solving all the world's problems over a cup of coffee. Well, at least on my side. Yeah.
Quite good at that, to be honest. Let's do this stories, Jay. What do you say? The first one is from our friend Kristen Robinson over at Billboard. This is an interesting one. Suno launches Artist Incubator, offering grants and marketing for indie talents. So AI music platform Suno has launched Spark, an artist incubator program offering independent musicians monetary grants ranging from thousands to tens of thousands of dollars, tailored marketing support, and access to its professional songwriting camps.
Yeah, you and I need to attend one of those. You know, so eligible artists must be, over 18, unsigned, and releasing music under their own name. Artists retain full creative control and commercial rights. The announcement comes on the heels of Suno's $400 million, that Series D funding round, which valued the company at $5.4 billion.
Wow. Well, here's what you need to know. AI companies are now competing for artists, not just against them. Spark is a direct bid to build goodwill with the indie artist community, the same community currently suing Suno. Understanding this tension between AI's legal exposure and its PR strategy, super important.
Right. And Kristen does a great job of covering this music super app model that Suno's, that's their declared ambition. Their CEO, Mikey Schulman, explicitly said Suno doesn't want to become a record label. Instead, wants to position itself as an end-to-end platform for creation and consumption. This is a significant strategic signal about where tech companies see opportunity in the music ecosystem.
Right. Another thing to pay attention to, copyright is the defining legal battleground of this era. The fact that Warner settled and signed a licensing deal while UMG and Sony continue to litigate shows the industry is split on how to handle AI.
Right. These artist rights terms, they really matter, so you need to read them very carefully. So Spark, the promise that artists retain creative control and commercial rights sounds appealing, but the article also notes that Suno won't dictate distribution, which raises questions about what Suno does get in return. When evaluating any deal, emerging artists and the people that advise them, they really need to ask what the company receives, not just what it offers.
And these things to consider, of course, songwriting camps are a deliberate industry bridge. So Suno's camps with names like Timbaland and Ommas Keith serve a dual purpose: product testing and credibility building with legacy music professionals. It's really a smart strategy worth studying as a case study in how tech companies try to enter creative industries.
Yeah, it sure is. Great piece by Kristen Robinson, as always. Our next story is from Ariel King from Music Business Worldwide. The headline is "The Science Behind Ticketing: How Artists and Their Teams Price Tours." So this month, Ariel King pulls back the curtain on concert ticket pricing, drawing on interviews with Live Nation's president of touring, a UTA booking agent, and an artist manager at Red Light Management. The core argument: ticket prices aren't arbitrary. They're the output of a multi-party negotiation balancing real costs against what fans in specific markets can actually bear.
Right. So they say pricing is driven by two cost buckets. Number one, the artist's touring overhead, buses, crew, production, commissions, and desired profit margin. And number two, the cost of mounting the show itself, venue rent, stagehands, security, catering. Post-pandemic production costs have risen sharply, which directly pushes prices up. Venue type matters too. Clubs have built-in gear. It's cheaper to operate, while hard-ticket amphitheaters and sheds require building everything from scratch, adding expense even as they offer a bigger brand moment.
That's right. The process involves agents negotiating with promoters, both referencing secondary market data like StubHub and SeatGeek, I hadn't thought of that, from previous tours to calibrate prices by city. Socioeconomic differences across markets means pricing is never a one-size-fits-all model. Dynamic pricing exists as a tool, but it's controversial. Many teams avoid it early and on sale to protect fans' goodwill. Anti-scalping measures like purchase limits, transfer restrictions, they're deployed with mixed legal success depending on the state. And artists ultimately hold the final approval on all pricing decisions.
Right. So here's some points you need to know. Touring is now the primary revenue stream. So with recorded music revenue fragmented across streaming, live performance is where most artists make real money, making smart tour economics essential.
Right. Number two, know the two cost buckets that you just mentioned a second ago. Artist side costs, that's production, travel, crew, commissions. But then the venue side costs, rent, labor, operations. These are negotiated separately, but both land in the ticket price. Understanding this split is, it's foundational for anyone touring or involved in management or booking.
Right. Market intelligence is a core skill, so agents and promoters actively study secondary market data from prior tours to price accurately by city. Data literacy, like knowing how to read what StubHub or SeatGeek activity signals, is a real professional competency.
Right. The next one, that venue type shapes the financial model. The soft ticket, club that you talked about, versus hard ticket, amphitheaters, sheds. That distinction isn't just about size. It determines build costs, profitability, long-term career positioning. Paying a less profitable hard ticket show can increase your leverage with festival buyers.
Right. Another point to keep in mind, dynamic pricing is a live debate, not a default. Artist teams weigh revenue upside against fan perception risk. Most use it cautiously, if at all, and usually only for remaining inventory close to show date.
Right, and this one's really important. The artist has the final say, but needs the whole team. Managers, agents, business managers, production managers, and promoters all inform the decision, but the artist has to sign off on it.
Right. And the last point, fan trust is a business variable. Teams actively monitor social media sentiment around pricing. Fan goodwill isn't soft. It affects future demand, tour viability, and festival booking power. Interesting points that I didn't even consider.
Yeah, and I didn't know they were really looking at some of that data, like StubHub and SeatGeek, but it makes perfect sense. Our next story we found on LinkedIn, and it's by someone who we've featured before, and that's Carlo Kixon. Thank you, Carlo. And the headline is Why Artists Can't Ignore Vanity Metrics. So Carlo's piece argues that vanity metrics, those are things like followers, streams, and likes, they're widely criticized as shallow measures of success, but artists in the music industry can't afford to simply ignore them. The reason is it's practical. Industry gatekeepers, like booking agents, A&R reps, festival promoters, they use these numbers as a quick shorthand when evaluating dozens of artists every week.
Yep. Vanity metrics are the only publicly verifiable data available, which makes them a de facto branding asset, regardless of their analytical limitations. That said, Kixon also explains how these numbers can be gamed, why experienced insiders recognize inflated figures, and why the best decisions in music ultimately come down to qualitative judgment. Made by ear, they say, not spreadsheet.
That's right. So here's what you need to know. Know the difference between vanity and actionable metrics. Vanity metrics, like I mentioned, follower count, stream totals, They're pretty easy to inflate and they reveal little about fan behavior, but actionable metrics, save rates, watch time, ticket sales, they reflect a genuine audience intent, but they're private and harder to get from the outside.
Right. Also, gatekeepers use vanity metrics as shortcuts, and that's unlikely to change. So decision makers are evaluating many artists simultaneously. Publicly visible numbers are fast to read, even if imperfect, so they become industry shorthand. Understanding this reality is more useful than resenting it.
Right. Number 3, understand how numbers get inflated so you can spot and avoid it. Playlist farming, YouTube smart TV ad buys, cheap market follower campaigns, all these inflate numbers without building a real audience. Experienced gatekeepers recognize these patterns by looking at ratios, right? Views to comment ratios, follower to engagement ratios.
Another point to consider, vanity metrics get you in the room, but they don't close the deal. The ultimate judgment in music is qualitative, how it sounds, what scene you belong to, the intangible quality of your appeal. Data opens doors. Artistry is what keeps them open.
That's right. And the last one, do a cold gatekeeper audit of your own profile. Open a private browser, search your artist name, and look at what a booking agent sees in the first 30 seconds. This is a pretty cool exercise every emerging artist should run regularly. So interesting take, a little bit counterintuitive, but really great points there by Carlo Kixon. And again, it's called Why Artists Can't Ignore Vanity Metrics from LinkedIn. Great job, Carlo.
Our next piece, it is by Rich Kawoje for Hypebot. The label model is training artists not to need labels. So written by Rich Kawoje. He's an attorney, artist manager, and independent musician for Hypebot. This piece argues that the modern label system has created a self-defeating paradox. The very proof labels require before signing an artist is the same work that makes a label unnecessary, because labels now wait for market validation, streaming numbers, social engagement, tour history, press, before offering deals. Artists must build all of that themselves first.
There's a lot of truth to that, Mike. A lot of these labels will throw gasoline on your fire. It's almost like Shark Tank. They're looking for you to build your business first, show them that you're mature enough to handle fame and that you've already built an audience and you play certain cap rooms and sell certain levels of merch, things like that. So by the time a label comes calling, the artist has already learned to do what the label would have done. The goal, he says, isn't to avoid labels. It's to reach a position where signing with one is a genuine choice rather than a lifeline.
So here's what you need to know from Rich's article. Labels behave like banks, not believers. They don't take chances on potential. They invest in demonstrated traction. An artist's Spotify metrics and social data are treated like a stock chart.
And the next one, being signed does not equal being helped. A deal that fronts a little money but provides no real, booking support, press strategy, radio campaign, or key, audience development isn't really a launch pad. It's a revenue split with extra obligations. Evaluate any offer by what it actually adds, not what the status of being signed feels like.
Right. As this article points out, artists are already doing label work, booking shows, pitching press, chasing playlist ads, monitoring radio. That's A&R and marketing work right there. Recognizing it as such helps you do it more intentionally and get better at it.
Right. And more is not a strategy. Overplaying local markets, flooding fans with announcements, and chasing every opportunity, it can burn fan equity and not build it. Strategic restraint, fewer and better moves compounds over time.
Right. Build proof through gatekeepers, not around them. Important point. Radio programmers, bookers, journalists, and festival buyers are the people who create the credibility labels measure. Cultivating those relationships directly is more productive than pitching labels cold.
Right. And the final point, the goal is leverage, not necessarily a deal. If you do the development work and build a real audience, you enter any label negotiation from a position of strength, able to ask, what are you adding? That's a fundamentally different conversation than asking to be picked. I thought that was spot on. Great piece.
Yeah, really. And again, that's so many artists have that decision to make now. It's like, you've done so much of the groundwork yourself. You've gotten to a point where they are interested in you.
That's right.
Is it really worth it to walk across the threshold and have them participate? Or do you just keep doing it as you've been doing it?
And that's a really good point. But a lot of artists today are doing it on their own because the days of just starting from zero, trying to go from 0 to 60, a lot of that is done. It's over. They don't have the budgets. They don't have the patience to do artist development like now. So they're sort of adding gasoline to your fire, and you need to build that business first.
Yeah, exactly. Well, our next piece is by Larisha Paul over at Rolling Stone. Lizzo's new album didn't even chart. What happened? So Lizzo's 5th studio album, Bitch, that's on Atlantic Records. It was released on June 5th, actually just recently. Sold just 2,649 copies and generated under 2.7 million on-demand streams in the first week, failing to chart on the Billboard 200 entirely. This is a dramatic collapse from her 2022 album Special, which debuted at number 2 with 39,000 units.
Yeah, this is crazy. Industry insiders attribute the failure to a combination of factors. The erosion of her fan base following a high-profile sexual harassment lawsuit, a perceived mismatch between her radio-era appeal and the current streaming landscape, music that maybe lacks the infectious quality of her earlier hits, and what appears to be a minimal promotional investment from Atlantic.
Right. Well, here's what you need to know. First off, radio hits don't automatically translate to streaming longevity. Lizzo herself acknowledged she was a radio darling whose fans discovered her through airplay, a model that has been substantially displaced by streaming. Artists who build audiences through radio rather than community-driven fandom face structural vulnerability when the primary discovery channel shifts.
Right. Number 2, a loyal core fan base matters more than chart hits. Multiple executives quoted in the piece argue Lizzo never cultivated a dedicated fan base. Her success was song-driven and moment-driven. In today's market, that base is what sustains an artist between album cycles and drives opening week numbers.
A third point, brand persona alignment is a commercial asset and a liability when broken. Lizzo's brand was built on body positivity, self-confidence, and championing marginalized people. The 2023 lawsuit in which former backup dancers accused her of fat shaming and creating a hostile work environment directly contradicted that brand. When an artist's public persona and private behavior diverge that visibly, fan trust erodes fast and doesn't easily return.
Wow. The next point is that label support is not guaranteed, especially for legacy artists on a cold streak. Atlantic appears to have given the album Bitch a minimal rollout. Lizzo literally put up her own street team posters and publicly called out the label on social media. The article notes a structural reality that major labels deprioritize artists who aren't already showing momentum, and the team that originally signed Lizzo is no longer in place at Atlantic.
No, that's right. Another point, social media reach does not equal commercial impact. So Lizzo has 26 or more than 26 million TikTok followers and more than 11 million on Instagram. She still couldn't move meaningful units. Follower count is a weak proxy for purchasing intent or genuine fandom. Industry pundit Ray Daniels made the pointed observation that she spent her platform complaining about the label rather than activating fans around the music.
Right. And the next one is that music quality and A&R instincts, they still matter. Executives noted that the album Bitch lacks the infectious formatted quality that made her earlier hits work. One source described it as tired moves and cynical appeals to the streaming algorithm. Chasing algorithmic formats without genuine creativity, energy tends to underperform both critically and commercially.
Well, and finally, a last point. A hit can reset everything, but it's not guaranteed. This piece ends on a cautiously hopeful note. Comebacks happen, and a hit cures all. Zara Larsson's 2026 breakthrough after a decade of work is cited as a counterexample. The music industry has a short memory for failure if the next song lands.
Ain't that the truth?
True.
That
so true.
So our next story is from Billboard, and the headline is iHeartMedia layoffs hit radio hosts and staff. So iHeartMedia, the largest radio broadcaster in the U.S., that's over 860 stations and almost 22% of the market. They announced a second round of layoffs in June, eliminating dozens of on-air and staff positions across multiple markets, including Florida, Pennsylvania, and Iowa.
Right. This follows an earlier round back in April targeting management and sales. The company framed the cuts as a programming realignment to leverage technology and emerging talent, though it publicly maintains it doesn't use AI in programming.
Programming realignment. I don't like the sound of that. The layoffs are driven by persistent financial pressure. Despite a profitable core radio business and a booming podcast division, they said that, geopolitical uncertainty, like the Iran war, has sort of reduced ad spend. It's added further headwinds through the company, and, it's banking on a midterm election ad spend to boost, to close that gap.
Right. So here's what you need to know and consider. Radio is still big, but structurally stressed. So iHeart controls, as Jay said, over 22% of the music radio market and runs about a 24% profit margin on its core business. Size and profitability don't protect you from debt and shifting listener behavior. Know the difference between operational health and financial health.
Right. And the final point, live, local talent is what listeners want and what's getting cut. The audience comments in the article, they push back hard on the loss of live DJs. There's a persistent tension between, audiences, personality, locality, authenticity, and what economics demand: centralization, syndication, automation. If you're a music industry professional, understanding that tension will be relevant in almost any role that you pursue.
Gosh, it is such a shame when you lose those personalities on the air that you have grown up listening to or that you look forward to every day. It just kind of drops the wind out of your sails.
It sure does.
It seems like that those are not big enough cuts to warrant doing that. But who am I to say, Jay? Who am I to say? Our last story, it's from Music Business Worldwide. StubHub fined $1.2 million by UK market watchdog over hidden fees, ordered to refund more than 50,000 customers. So the UK's Competition and Markets Authority, that's the CMA, fined StubHub UK a little over $1.2 million on June 23rd and ordered it to refund over 51,000 customers for violating consumer law through drip pricing, the practice of advertising a low headline ticket price and only revealing mandatory fees like delivery and service charges at checkout.
Yeah, this is something that we've complained about globally for years. And here's what you need to know about drip pricing. So service fees, delivery charges, booking fees, they must be included in the advertised price from the start of the purchase, not revealed at the final step. It's now illegal to do that in the UK.
Right. Another interesting point that you need to know, the secondary ticketing market is under serious regulatory pressure. So StubHub is the first secondary platform fined under the new regime, but it's not going to be the last. Viagogo is already under investigation for the same issue, and Ticketmaster faced scrutiny over the 2025 Oasis reunion sale.
Yeah, and finally, transparency is a competitive and legal imperative. As one industry executive put it, fans have been conditioned to expect sticker shock at checkout, and that's a sign of a broken market. Companies that build upfront, all-in pricing into their platforms will be better positioned legally and reputationally as consumer protection standards tighten globally.
Yes, indeed. Well, interesting articles. Hey, but it is time to wrap up the show, Jay. I do want to thank our big sponsors, of course, Cosign. And if you want to advertise in the podcast and newsletter, you can jump over to yourmorning.coffee. Music is by our friends, the Licorice Quartet. And Jay and I would appreciate it if you just tell one friend if you like the show. Just one. That's all we ask for. So on behalf of my good friend Jay Gilbert, I am Mike Etchart. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back next week on the Your Morning Coffee Podcast.
You've been listening to Your Morning Coffee, the weekly music news program for the new music business. Join Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart next time for the digital music news you need to know.